Here we are again with another step to get a perfect jacket custom fit pattern. If you've already done all the other steps, including cutting this pattern out, you're ready now to sew the muslin toile. Make sure all the notches are in. Everywhere on this pattern, all the darts have been marked in with your tracing paper. And most importantly, guys, that these two slit mark indications have been put in the main garment on the jacket pattern, as well as the facing. Just to reiterate how to get those same markings on the facing itself, because they're not on the pattern. You have to put the two pieces together like this. You have to find your exact color or markings for your slash indication. When you find that, go ahead and poke a hole like that, and you will get it on the other side, and that will be your X or your little slash mark. Also, these directions on how to put this peaked unlined jacket pattern together is on my website under pattern instructions, the jacket pattern. So you can follow that if that helps you as well. And that shows you with the binding. When we're doing the mock-up, we don't have to do any of the finishes or any of the binding. We want just the main pieces of this jacket put together so that we can get a proper fit. Pro tip, since you're working with muslin, the fabric is the same on both sides, and so you don't get confused, especially with the sleeve. Go ahead and put an R on one side of the fabric on all the pattern pieces, so that when you're putting this toile together, you actually do not get the pieces confused. The first step is to put the darts in. So we're going to go ahead and take the main jacket piece here, right sides together, get those notches where it starts, put a pin through to make sure you're getting both sides of that dart. Put as many pins as you need and sew it all the way up to the dart point. The back dart as well. Now sew them out. Go to the end of the dart. Do not backstitch. Instead, tie off a knot once, twice, trim about 1 inch away. Press the back dart towards the center back, letting it slightly concave there at the tip. Press the front lapel darts towards the center front, making sure to get it out as much as you can where the apex or where the dart point is, and give yourself that curve like that. Again, I want to reiterate that this is steps to putting the muslin toile together for a fitting. This is not how to sew the garment together as a garment to wear out. So these steps are going to eliminate the binding, the pocket, and any other finishes that might be on the actual jacket pattern instructions that's on my website and on my videos. Also note that this entire pattern is sewn together with 1/2 inch seam allowance. I just put 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around this pattern as a professional pattern so that you're not confused and you have enough ample space in order to do lapels and pad stitching for the future. Now take the two center back sections of the muslin toile and go ahead and put them on the wrong side. You want to actually mark where you're going to stop because we have a vent in the back. So you want to measure up from your size 1/2 inch this way and 1/2 inch this way. And this is going to be your ending of where you're going to sew. And put those two pieces right sides together. Pin them from the top all the way to that vent opening intersection right there. Sew that seam down at 1/2 inch seam allowance. You can use a larger stitch like a 3 or 4 because that will help you with the adjustment process when you have to rip out any seams. So 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way down until you get to that cross mark and back stitch. Now lay out the remaining main parts of this jacket, center back pieces, the side back pieces, and the center front pieces out like this. Right sides together, find the appropriate piece, start at the notch point, pin up, and all the way down on all the pieces. Also pin the shoulders together, right sides together. So all seams down at 1/2 inch. Back stitch at the top, just so it doesn't fall apart on you. Keep in mind the side back going into the back armhole has an extension on this piece. I trimmed mine, but even if it goes a little bit further, that's okay. It makes for a better transition with the sleeve. Now it's helpful to use a ham. Go ahead and press all of the seam allowances open. The main jacket pieces are sewn in. Go ahead and put that aside and bring the facings in. Here are the facings. Here's the front facing. Here is the back neck facing. What I'd like you to do first is put a stay stitch 1/2 inch away around this neckline all the way up to the lapel peak. You want to use a smaller stitch when you're actually doing the stay stitching so that it is sturdy and prevents any problems. At 1/2 inch, meeting where that X is, pivot, continue at 1/2 inch, now with the peak lapel facing, have the peaks together and right sides together, put the back facing in at the shoulder this way. and this way, so you have it like this, and sew that, those two seams at 1/2 of an inch, and press open. Now on the main jacket, do the same thing with the stay stitching from the peak of the lapel, hitting those intersection cross marks all the way to the shoulder seam at 1/2 of an inch. Okay, we're getting ready to do the collar, and you can see this pattern has 2 grain lines. In the last episode, I taught you that there is a top collar and there is an under collar, and the top collar is going to be using a straight grain and the bias grain is for the under collar. Again, I am not using interfacing for the muslin toile for the fitting. So let's take the facing first and clip to that intersection, but not quite. You want to go shy of your sewing line. You don't want to go too far, guys. And over here as well. And you want to do it on both sides of the facing and the lapel. Now that's released so that you have movement to adjust and pin and sew to the collar pieces. Now it might be easier to clip this a little bit too because this is curved. So not going past your 1/2 of an inch, give you a clip. So this can be a little tricky if you've never done it. So what I'd like to do, since this is a muslin mock-up, not on your regular good fabric in your final garment, I want you to put in that 1/2 of an inch intersection at the edge of part of that collar like that, and like that, and like that. So we have these intersections on that side. This will help you, I think, in the sewing process and also to understand the process a little bit better. Now you want to find the straight grain one that you cut for the main jacket, and the bias one is going to go to the facing. Put that aside for a moment. Right sides together. Get the center notch of that collar. Remember, this edge here has no notches. That's the outer part of the collar. The inside of the collar has the notches. Make sure you know that. With the center notch going at the back center seam. Center back seam. Go ahead and put a pin. This notch, which will be your shoulder seam, and then go ahead and put a couple more pins in between. The second notch that you have from the center will be your shoulder seam. Put that on the shoulder seam. Go ahead and put other pins in between. And now this is where it gets tricky, guys. So you've got this intersection here is supposed to match where that pivot point is. So clearly this is the most challenging part. I like to put the curved edge underneath, even though it doesn't look kosher like that. But you want to put as many pins as you need to on that area. And as you can see, just so you can see what I'm doing on this side, I'll go ahead and take this out. I'm going around the corner, around the clipped edge of the neckline, trying to pin around the 1/2 of an inch mark, making this intersection meet hopefully that intersection of the neckline, like that, and putting pins this way to get that, because then this has to pivot and it ends here at the lapel area. Putting the main jacket aside for a moment, and now I'm going to the facing. I want to help it along as well and clip around the back part of the facing just a little bit. Now you've got the bias collar, and you've got the center back notch or seam, the center back notch, going with the center back notch. Pinning all the way around. Putting in as many pins as necessary. Shaping that to the pivot point underneath there. Then again, pivoting at this point to where it's supposed to end at the collar. Take your time with this. Take your time with this step, guys, because if this is not right, the two pieces, the top and the facing, will not sew together properly. Matching the shoulder seams to that notch. And put in as many pins as you need in between. To that intersection, and then to the end of the collar where it hits the lapel. At 1/2 inch. Now with the facing, and that's the 1/2 inch, turn back, that's where that ends. Very carefully sew all the way around at a 1/2 inch, making sure that nothing is buckling underneath. So go slow. Here at the end, go to that pivot point, pivot, and continue stitching at a 1/2 inch all the way around. Checking every once in a while that things are smooth underneath. I'm going to go one more stitch this way, then pivot so I can get my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then end there at the end of the collar, taking out the pins just to reveal, hopefully we did it okay. it takes practice and it takes a lot of maneuvering. So if after you sew it and you turn it and you see little bubbles or you see things that are not right, go ahead and take those little portions out and redo those small portions. But this time, instead of doing it on the top collar, fix the portions underneath, in the inside. That way you have more control at the final results. Get a nice intersection there and there. Now get on the pressing board and everything is lining up good here. Turn it over. Use a very flat ham and press the seam allowance upward. Pressing the seam allowance upward, also on the facing. Now you both have the facing collar and the main collar done. You're going to be placing them on top of each other, right sides together, and start the pinning process. So I have this intersection here where the collar and the lapel meets. Start pinning the two pieces together. You're going to pin the collar separate and then the lapel separate. So here at the intersection, I'm going to put my first pin. All the way across. You can do it this way or you can do it the other way. Remember the bias is underneath. That will give, so you want the top straight grain on top. And then I'm going to go back here to the other intersection of where that collar starts. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the lapel pieces, separate it. There's going to be a space here. You want to take those two pieces, and they have to be precise. And that's why you have to end in the same place on both the top collar and the facing collar. And if you haven't, adjust those and fix it. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to pin. I'd like to do this collar first, and then when I'm doing the lapel, I like to start from that point instead of starting from the bottom. So I'm going to then change that. To this side, because I'm right-handed. And I'm going to start at that pivot point. And go all the way down. And then you're going to pin the lapel together. You want to put the two peaks together first to make sure that that is in the right spot. And then work your way all the way up to the intersection again, where that collar meets, to make sure that that is right and nothing is stretched out of shape, hopefully. And go ahead and pin that. And you want to pin it all the way down. You're going to go around this curve here. I'm going to make sure that it's kosher. And you're going to be sewing all the way over here, and see the facing stops over here. You actually going to be sewing 1/2 inch like that, and you're going to stop pretty much before that facing ends, and it's going to be also the mitering, which will allow then the hem to fold up properly. I'm going to start sewing here at this intersection, so I'm going to push the excess seam allowance back like that, and I'm going to start my stitching here and go all the way around the collar at 1/2 inch. So there it is, the collar sewn in all the way around. And now we've got to start from that same little intersection to sew around the peaked lapel up to the top tip, all the way around to the bottom of the jacket at 1/2 inch. Following that curve, and stopping about 1/2 inch from that raw edge of the facing itself. Back stitch. Now all of this has to be trimmed to 1/4 inch, especially the collar. So here we go. You want to make sure you don't clip anything that you shouldn't. So leave that for now and go around and clip 1/4 inch. On the corners, you want to clip straight across and then trim 1/4 inch all the way around. That goes for the peak lapel. You want to clip a straight across 1/4 inch away and then trim all the way around the lapel 1/4 inch this way, as well as up to where the collar is. Now the fun part, we've got to turn this collar from the outside in, and we have to use a turning pointer like this that is sharp but is not going to affect or puncture my garment. And go ahead and turn the collar in like that. Use some wooden, not a wooden pencil, because that'll go all the way through. You want to get something that has an edge like that is not going to hurt the fabric. And gently get the corners of the collar, and a peaked one, it's very, very pointy. It's going to take a lot of maneuvering, so just go slow with that. And gently turn it and turn it and turn it without stretching it or puncturing it. To get that particular point. Now you see how when you have that facing turned like that, guys, what happens is it pushes the hem to the proper spot. So now you know where the hem starts and where the actual curve of the end of the jacket ends. So I wasn't going to show you some of my bad habits, and that's if you're very gentle and it's not your delicate fabric, you can go ahead and try to maneuver out the very last bit of it with a pin. Also note, guys, that you want to use this all the way around the lapel. All the way around to the end curve here in the front of the jacket. Why is there no back stitching here or here? Because in a jacket, you're going to be turning this back like this. And if you understitched all the way around here, it might not show here, but then it's going to show when it turns into the front part of the jacket where your buttons go and your buttonholes. So, and steam it, making sure that it is exactly butt up edge to edge, not one side under more than the other on the front of the jacket. Here is your peak lapel. See how they go together? It's stretched out here, so you want to kind of help it out so that they do kind of meet and go together. Pat it. There we go so far. Let's get to the sleeves.